Hello and welcome to Banking Frontiers Live. This is one of our most interesting conversations in the area of payment banks and what business opportunities we see in the payments banking space. Along with me, I have a very interesting personality today who is going to speak to us about how the payment banking sector is evolving. With me is Mr. Ashutosh Singh, who is the CEO of NSDL Payments Bank. Mr. Singh, welcome to Banking Frontiers Live.
Thank you, Mr. Nair, and I think pleasure is all mine to be a part of this interview series you're doing, and I'm sure we'll have a very interesting conversation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. So let us start off by trying to understand a little bit about how the lockdown period has posed a lot of learning for you, and especially with respect to the rise in the amount of digital transactions. What is new now looking for a bank like yours? What opportunities do you see?
Babu, before I begin answering about what opportunities we see in the future, I think let me just preface my response with first of all acknowledging that this indeed is a very tough period for the vast many who've been ailing either medically or financially in what I would think is the worst life and livelihood tragedies of our times. I think the essence of this crisis was beautifully captured by one Helen Clark, former Prime Minister of New Zealand. When asked on the crisis, she remarked, "Economies can recover, but the dead cannot." So let me talk about first how the last 6 months have been for us. I think it is sheer coincidence. NSDL Payments Bank launched its flagship product called NSDL Jiffy sometime in the month of January, January end actually. And within 2 months, we were hit by the lockdown. But from January until the lockdown started, those 2 months allowed us enough time to actually sort out the glitches in the account opening journey. And by the time we were in the throes of the lockdown, pan-India lockdown, I think we had a journey that was working beautifully, smoothly, and any customer could open his account in a matter of 5 to 7 minutes. And obviously, I think we've been beneficiaries of what we've seen in the last 6 months because in this lockdown, willy-nilly, even the digital fence sitters had no option but start adopting and flocking to digital channels in a big way. We were beneficiaries of this shift in consumer behavior. So our numbers actually scaled by more than 10 to 12x. Let me also be the first one to concede. We are coming obviously of a very small base. We are only starting out. But I think you would take those set of numbers any day, any time. So from what we're doing in Feb and March, our numbers grew exponentially. And we've pretty much maintained that growth throughout this period. This gave us a lot of confidence, energized the whole team. And we've utilized the last 6 months very productively. We've rolled out a lot of new products, products in the area of financial inclusion, domestic money transfer, micro ATM. We've seen our businesses scale very rapidly. So I think last 6 months have been for a bank like us that is mostly underpinned on B2B as a strategy, business strategy, and on technology as an enabler. So for a business like ours, I think the last 6 months have been very good. I think we're well poised to take advantage of the shifts in trends that we'll see even in the coming times.
That was a very good encapsulation of how you started off and how your experience has been and things like that. One of the most important challenges that organizations like yours have is you cannot offset loss of revenue because the banks cannot offer loans. So what are those opportunities that the banks can focus upon to have better revenues?
So on this, I think like most of the payment banks, and in fact, like most of the universal commercial banks even, I think we have business areas and we have business areas essentially in three important components. One is the first one actually stems from convention. So like most banks, we also harbor deep ambitions in trying to build a strong liability franchise. And to do that, obviously, we have 2 or 3 areas that we focus on. One is the digital area where we've already hit our stride and we are seeing good acquisitions happen on the digital side of savings bank account. The other is we are obviously looking at tying up with DPs, brokers in the capital market space, and onboard their customers in turn, so that the brokers can offer a very compelling 3-in-1 journey to their customers. And third one is through the BC network, where we are looking to serve the disadvantaged sections of society, and get our savings account story going even from that component. So that's on the liability side, and that's the first strategic imperative. The second one, I think, it clearly comes from the strength of payment banks. In the last few years, you would have seen that payment banks have now they've started to dominate the financial inclusion space. So whether it is products like domestic money transfer, micro ATM, Aadhaar-enabled payment services. So these are areas where the big boys are slowly over a period of time vacating from that space, and you have payment banks holding sway there. So that's another area which is of strategic imperative for us, and we want to emulate the successes of other payment banks in that space. The third strategic imperative for us is essentially on the payment side. So whether it is the consumer side of it, or it is the B2B side of it, we are also looking at products like payment gateway, POS, prepaid, to meet the payment needs of retail consumers and wholesale businesses as well. So these are our three big goals. Apart from these, obviously there are a whole lot of cross-sell opportunities. When you try to complete your product stack, you throw in mutual funds in it, you throw in insurance in it. We are also doing penny drop, which is a very important product for the capital market space. So there are a lot of cross-sell opportunities once we've onboarded the customers in those three areas, which are our big goals. We also are looking at cross-sell opportunities once the customers are onboarded. So that becomes a fourth area of interest for us. Coming back to the point you made on payment bank being a slightly restricted space, there are so many products you cannot do. But honestly, if you ask me, so while your observation is bang on, we cannot do anything on the lending side. Even on deposits, there are certain restrictions you have to work within. But I think, on the lending side, honestly, looking at the asset quality concerns that institutions are going through, that's not an area I'm missing out on at this point. So while it could appear that I'm operating from a restricted space, it doesn't hurt me very badly, at least the way things are today. So one is obviously, as a payment bank, you're operating from a slightly constricted space where you cannot do many products. And on the other hand, you are mostly doing products, which I would put in the category of high volume, low value, low margin, right? So given these two, where one is limited products you can do, and the other is, the category of products that you're doing, which are mostly high frequency, low value, low margin, it becomes imperative for a bank like ours to nail the right business model. So in our case, I think we have taken a conscious call. We don't harbor any deep ambitions, in terms of setting up our own distribution networks. So like I pointed out earlier, I think our business strategy is completely underpinned on B2B. So that's an area where we are completely focused on. And the other component of our strategy overall is, the leanings on technology in terms of achieving scale. So I think B2B technology, these are extremely important components of our business model. Now, for a payments bank to absolutely nail and crack this piece, what is it that we're doing differently? So we are working very closely with our business partners. This is maybe a luxury that I enjoy and many of the entrenched players will not really have, where I can get my entire team, whether it is a compliance, technology, risk guys, business guys on one call, along with the core team of the business partner on the other hand, so that we work closely together. We have these weekly meetings, we thrash out issues, we get back on weekly calls. So that way it keeps both sides on their toes, and we are able to scale very rapidly. And that way, I think we are being able to scale our businesses on the financial inclusion products like DMT, micro ATM, Aadhaar-enabled payment services, and also on the prepaid products. So I think we are essentially trying to provide three things to our business partners. So on the technology side, obviously, I want to give him a tech stack that is highly scalable, available, very low latency. So that is one thing we are working very aggressively on delivering. The other is we are trying to make our whole processes, whether it is the onboarding process of the agent or onboarding process of his customers, very efficient, very effort free, so that and obviously in compliance with the regulatory requirements. If you do that, then business partners also feel delighted, and achieving scale becomes a lot easier. To retain relationships, essentially you need to provide a good tech stack. You need to focus on co-creating the relevant products, because business partners are our eyes and ears on the ground. They are the ones who come with feedback. We take that feedback in earnest, and we develop products around what is the requirement of the market.
I think that is good news for anybody who has set up a bank. So, who are
Correct.
these main partners whom you are talking about? Is that the BCs, or is it the depositories, or what exactly?
Correct. So, like I said, we have our business interests in the financial inclusion space. So, in the financial inclusion space, it would be banking correspondence. So, think of the big names, and we are almost working with all the big names in the country today. If you talk about the area of prepaid cards, these would be program managers. So, again, in program prepaid card side, we are working with uh, most of the big names. I obviously am not at liberty at taking these names, but
Absolutely.
you know the usual suspects.
Absolutely.
And I think we are working with all these big guys, even on the prepaid card solution. And lastly, capital market. I mean, obviously, we draw strength from a parent company there, and we are working with a lot of big players, even on the capital market side. So we have signed up 40 plus mandates, and we have created a lot of these products which are capital market oriented, which most of the other banks would struggle to, because obviously they don't have a deep understanding of the capital market space the way we do, since our parent has been a bellwether in that space, quasi-regulator of sorts. So I think that really helps us, make a lot of these solutions on the capital market side, and obviously work with big DPs, DPs of all shapes and sizes actually. So we have business interests in all sides, and it is business partnerships that we are doing, whether it is banking correspondence on the financial inclusion side, program managers on the prepaid card side, PayFacs and aggregators on the payment gateway and POS solutions, and depository participants and brokers on the capital market side of the solutions we're working on.
Oh, so you have the universe working for you now. So, since you come from the pedigree of NSDL, I'm sure you will be drawing a lot of, advantages thanks to the pedigree of NSDL. That does the bank make use of the infrastructure of NSDL, or has its own standalone facility? And what kind of salient aspects of the infrastructure comes out, especially since you are a heavily tech focused kind of organization?
I think the fact that we have an extremely strong legacy is not lost on anyone. Also, the fact that today 90%, close to 90% of India's DP assets are managed by NSDL. Uh, you obviously better be having a great tech stack if you're going to manage assets in excess of 2 trillion rupees. So I think having the name itself evokes a sense of trust, a sense of security, and we clearly are big beneficiaries of that. Now, coming specifically to your question on what is it that we are doing with NSD on the tech side, yes, pretty unapologetic about it. We are using the deep experience, the deep expertise that NSDL as a group already has on tech solutions. So there is a whole lot of consultations and discussions that are carried out with our parent company. On the infra side, I think we obviously have a shared database, but in the database also we have a separate instances. So mostly we are, dipping on the expertise through the mutual discussions and consultations that we have. Now, again, in the area of software and hardware, if let's say there are, shared interest, if there are common things that we need to do as a group, then obviously that helps us drive cost efficiencies through economies of scale. So that again is an area where whenever we make any decision, we obviously consult our group companies where we feel we have a deep expertise within the group. we basically take up the task of trying to develop solutions and applications on our own. So there are a whole lot of applications where we feel we have a deep expertise that we are building on our own. And for the other universal products, we could be obviously roping in the services of technology service providers. So on the prepaid side, to do the switching, again on the POS and PG side to do the switching, we will have the services of a technology service provider. So I think we have a mix. We have a mix of what we do indigenously in-house and what we also outsource. So I think it's a mixed strategy, and so far it's standing us in good stead.
Fantastic. That's a good way to take the best of both worlds. You also have a focus on the rural markets or for inclusion and things like that. From whatever I understand from your conversation about engaging with the BCs and things like that. So, is there any specific focus on this market, broad based, or is it just one of those areas that you target?
So on this, Babu, one of the licensing conditions of payment banks is to at least have a 25% presence in the unbanked rural centers. Payment Bank as a group has done a stellar job in terms of trying to reach to these unbanked areas, rural areas, set up centers there, service the bottom of the pyramid, disadvantaged sections of society. So, for us as a payment bank, we too are trying to emulate the success of what some of the other payment banks have already done in that space. Uh, every year, as a payment bank, you have to make an application to Reserve Bank, where you talk about the number of centers that you'll open pan India. So in our case, we are looking at about having a number of 25,000 outlets in the next 10 to 12 months. So we'll be doing a lot of these activities in the unbanked centers that we plan to open our outlets in the next 10 to 12 months. The idea is, the bottom of the pyramid, guys, for them, it should not be about always having to choose between life and livelihood. How do you also nudge them towards taking the small micro insurance products, get them into a small savings habit through some investments that they can do in a small way? So these are things that we will do our bit through the CSR activity of our parent company, bringing that element of philanthropy. So that obviously is going to be a very important component of our business strategy. One is it comes from regulation, but the other is it also comes from the whole nobility to the cause, which we completely are with RBI and central government.
I have had a great conversation with you, Ashutosh, and while I would love to go on and on, I am sure time is also a constraint here, and we should leave something more for the next future conversations as well. So great
Thank you
talking
so
to you.
much. Thank you so much, Babu. I think you have really enjoyed this conversation, and I look
Yes.
forward to interactions maybe next time in person.
Thank you for sharing all this valuable information
Thank you
with
so
me.
much, Babu. Really been a pleasure.
Thank you.